Okay, welcome back to the Wildly Capable Show. This is episode 2 in our mini motherhood series. The first episode, if you missed it, was all about motherhood mindset. Go give that a listen because it's just going to give a really good starting place for where your head should be at in this conversation. Literally, it's a mindset episode. So go check that out. That was last week. This week, we're going to be talking about 3 pain points that I know every single mom has felt before or is currently going through. And those are 1, the overwhelm. Being overwhelmed and having just the mental load that sits on our shoulders is insane. What do we do about that? 2 is the information overload, the input, I'm not really sure who to lean into or really seek wise counsel from because there's so many opinions on topics. What do we do? And then number 3 is the loss of identity. Sometimes we can feel like, who am I? I blinked and all of a sudden I lost all my interests or my hobbies. I feel like all I do is like change diapers and wash bottles. So if any of those are you or you've been those in the past, today's episode has nuggets of information and hopefully encouragement for you in today's show. So those are the 3 pain points I'm going to be addressing specifically. I've walked through all of these. I'm currently walking through several of them as well right now. So this is a very timely episode for us. Just a reminder, if you're on Apple Podcasts or Spotify or another podcasting app, wonderful. We love having you there. If you like to watch videos instead of just listen to them, go check us out on YouTube. We're at youtube.com/homegrown_education. That's where we post all of the Wildly Capable Show episodes. And I'm right here with you. I'm looking at you right in the camera. And it's just a fun way to just like visually connect. But then also there's a comment section below that you guys can ask questions or leave encouragement for other people in the community. Treat it like a little chat or a forum. And that can be really fun. So that's over on YouTube if you want to check it out. Okay, so let's just dive right in, right? The first pain point we're going to be talking about is this feeling of overwhelm. And it can feel physical, like you physically have walked around just like feeling nauseous. Like, I can't take another second of this. What's going on? It can feel very mentally driven, just your brain feels foggy, there's lots of chatter, it's not a quiet, peaceful thing. And it can come in waves. I think the first thing I want to say about overwhelm is that I almost want to partition it into 2 separate categories. I feel there is something so real about a mental overstimulation. It's not necessarily something in your day-to-day schedule that's overwhelming you, but you feel a constant mental overstimulation, and that has a different solution versus you have so many tasks on your schedule, you literally cannot get them all done. And so you feel overwhelmed, overburdened by your lack of energy or resources or time and the amount that you are expected to do. So those are 2 kind of different things. They can happen both at the same time, which you're in a real pickle if that's you, and I've been there. It's not fun to be dealing with both of those, but I just want to separate them for a second because I think they have very different solutions. So solution to what I'm calling the mental overstimulation, 9 times out of 10 has to do with what you're consuming digitally. It has to do with time on your phone. Are you on social medias? Are you constantly feeling pulled to answer the text message? Are you consuming articles or news feeds of any kind? How much are you stimulating your mind throughout the day? And is that leading to just an excess of overwhelming thoughts or feelings, or is it zapping your energy? So a good way to know if you're dealing with an overwhelm mentally is if I give you an extra hour in your day, I say you get a grace period, you get 1 extra hour, and you're like, I don't even know what to do with it. Like, you feel paralyzed by that, and you're like, I just kind of want to sit and stare at a wall. That's a good indicator that you're probably dealing with some sort of mental overstimulation, which is a very real thing. I'm not diminishing it by calling it that. I'm just saying that is a different plague than if you were not dealing with that. Say you really were like, I am so strapped for time. I have to drive all these kids around all the different places. I got to go shopping. I got to cook dinner. And I look at you and I say, you have 1 extra hour today. You get 25 hours instead of 24. You'd be like, oh, I know exactly what I'm going to do. Like, I'm going to get this thing done. I'm going to use that hour to check this thing off my list. if that's you, you're dealing less with the mental overstimulation and more with something we'll get into in a second, which is like expectations of yourself and those in your home. So back to the mental overstimulation piece. This is so real, and it feels just as big of a deal as your lack of time or resources in your schedule. They're truly, one's not like harder than the other. I just think they're different. And so what I found really helpful for me is doing a really weekly gut check with things relating to anything on my phone. How are my text message conversations, my social media engagement? What am I Googling? What is my YouTube? What is my Instagram? And taking a quick pause there to see how I'm contributing to my mental overwhelm. Now, sometimes the things that are weighing heavy on your mind and heart are not related to social media or anything digital. Maybe it's a conversation that you need to have. Maybe it's a conflict you're having with someone. Maybe you're going through and rehearsing that conversation in your head and you're kind of wondering what the outcomes will be. Maybe it's just this gnawing feeling of maybe a relationship in tension. Any of those things I would say are different. You can't just like unplug from your phone and they go away. They follow you, right? So there's another indication of kind of what you're dealing with. If you do unplug from your phone a bit and those things are still there, that is where I find it so helpful to take everything that's up here in your head and put it on paper. Being able to look at it, even if it's just a messy stream of consciousness and you're just like, these are just the things that I'm thinking right now, and you think you're going to look back and it's not going to make sense, put it on the paper. There's something about your hand taking those things and forming it into words, and you can actually look at it and have a physical representation of everything in your head. And it can also then help categorize like what's actually going on. Crazy things happen when you journal. This is why everyone like recommends it. It's like, do you go to therapy? Do you journal? You know, these are the things that people recommend. I found that super, super helpful. Now back to the social piece. We're going to get into this in the second part because information overload is definitely part of that overwhelming feeling. So I'm going to save some bits of advice I have there or things that have helped me in the past. But I do want to say that the mental overstimulation is often very quickly eased when I put in good things instead of trying to constantly take in mediocre or bad information. Worship music usually snaps me out immediately of like just a spiral of like negative thoughts. Reading the Bible, reading scripture is obviously always wonderful. Reading a devotion, having a physical book for me to read to just take my mind off of whatever I'm thinking of is kind of a distraction strategy that can be helpful for that mental overwhelm. Again, this isn't going to help you if you're like, I don't have hours in the day. Reading a book is not going to help. But for that mental overwhelm, that is helpful. And then you have to ask the really important question. Is the mental overstimulation a result of you not tackling something on your to-do list? So often the task that we have written on our to-do list that we feel like is going to take us forever stresses us out way more with it living in our head than it ever would if we would have just taken the time to immediately do it. That biggest example in my life is laundry. It's embarrassing, but I'm just so bad at laundry and I let it pile up. And here's how it manifests in my home. My kids then try to go get ready for the day. And I'm like, come on, let's be independent. Go get dressed. And they have no clothes in their drawers because their clothes are still in the basket unfolded. They're washed. They're clean. But like they're all mixed together and no one really knows whose is whose and what is what. And so it then creates this chaos of me now having to go pick out outfits for my very, very capable kids who could do that on their own had we just gotten it into the drawers and organized. So I tend to let the like lingering obligation of laundry stress me out when really I should just be putting a load in. So there's an example of the overwhelm, the mental overstimulation being a product of something that's you just need to get done in real life, a real life task. This can also happen with like decision fatigue too, like the question of like what's for dinner. It weighs on all of us. That's why I wrote a meal plan titled What's for Dinner, because it's still to this day, it can be challenging to figure it out and just you having to be the person that figures that out. It's frustrating, which leads me to the other side of overwhelm. So the other side of overwhelm is usually best tackled by redefining expectations in your house. If you're like, I'm the girl who doesn't have the hour to spend, if you give me an extra hour, I know exactly how to utilize it. I just need more time. I'm trying to get a lot done and I'm crunched. I'm in a pinch. Okay, so here's what I would start with. Set expectations for yourself, your spouse, and your kids. And so what you're going to do is for yourself, remember like you are crafting your days, you're crafting your months, your weeks, your schedules. You are in charge of that. It is a wonderful tool that you can utilize. Okay, it's just a little reminder there. What are the areas that you are strongest in? What are your natural giftings, your natural skills, the things that you don't mind doing? The stuff that you're like, I don't mind doing the dishes. I hate doing the laundry, just as an example. Or I really enjoy having a clean house. It's a big deal to me, and it's most convenient for me to clean as I go since I'm the primary person home. That's not something that I would necessarily pass on to my husband who works outside the home, right? It's like if I want the living room tidy, like I can handle that. Think about where you are physically during the day, your capabilities, things that you enjoy doing or don't dread doing, I would say. What areas might you need to automate or outsource? And this can be a number of things. This could be you're getting groceries delivered for a month. Maybe you're just in a tighter spot. Maybe you had a new sporting season start and you're driving an extra 2 or 3 days a week. And all of a sudden you're like, where's my time gone? Oh, I don't have any time to run to the grocery store. Like it's time to get some food delivered. And there's ways to make that affordable. Maybe you need to automate a subscription to something so you don't have to remember to purchase it. It's another thing you can take off of your mental load. Maybe there are like bills you can automate that you don't have to sit down and dedicate a time in your afternoon to make sure you're balancing the checkbook. I don't know if people still do that, but just examples of in your own life, where are areas where it might not be another person in your home that's taking it off your plate, but there's a service provided to you or some external person that you can bring in to help you take some pressure off. Ways that I've done this in the past is both free and paid. So having a babysitter once a week is usually what has helped me the most, especially in seasons of like having little babies. That can be really helpful. I'm outsourcing a few hours of my week to a babysitter to care for my younger kids, and then I can get things done like record this podcast or answer an email or write a book or a blog or something. And it's fun for me. I enjoy doing that. It's a good trade-off for me. I get some time to be creative, kind of fills my cup, to be honest. And then I also am like able to do that undistracted because I know my kids are well taken care of. Other things that I have done are grocery deliveries, especially this year after I had my fourth baby. I signed up for a grocery delivery service and it's just like you pay once a membership of like $50, I think, and then you get free delivery. So it ends up paying for itself really, but just knowing that I can any day of the week I need, even if I only need 5 things, I can have someone else go shop for me and bring it and drop it to my door. Saves me a tremendous amount of time and energy. It also kind of helps me budget because I can see what my cart is probably going to be. I can make a list while I'm standing there in my kitchen to make sure that I'm getting everything I need. So that can be super helpful. I actually did just download the app Rocket Money, which is so funny because they're like the advertisements got me. Like we've been watching a show and they keep advertising for it, and I eventually caved and I said, you know what, I'm going to do it. That is actually helpful because I'm the one that has to budget in the family. I'm taking care of the finances, and it's just not particularly my gifting. I'm okay with it if I can see everything in clear sight. And I was using spreadsheets before. So now I've used Rocket Money to show me like, this is how much money you've spent on groceries every month since the December 2024. This is what you're spending on subscriptions. This is what you are spending on auto care or gas. This is what you're spending on your household utility bills. It's really, really nice. And I think I pay like $5 a month or something. It's insane that it's affordable, right? And even if I just use it for a couple months to get a grip on things, then I can always cancel. But that is a good way to automate, because I was having to spend quite a bit of time looking at all my statements and then putting them in my Excel file, which is embarrassing to admit now that I think about it. But that's a good place to automate. Okay, so this is all you assessing like expectations of yourself. And you're like, am I doing too much? What am I doing? What's going on? Can I make myself more efficient? I'm the leader of my home as the one who is there during the day. I am setting the tone for my household. How can I best utilize my skills? How can I have fun with it? How can I be creative? How do you know when you're at your limit? Okay, this is a good indicator for you once you're setting expectations of yourself, because if you take if you take a reading of where you are right now and you're like, I am at capacity, you'll probably know you have truly no margin. You're going to bed super late because you're having to stay up to do the things that, just to close the house down. Your thoughts are drifting into a negative space, perhaps. If you are completely at your limit, if you're at capacity, I'm speaking from experience, honestly. Every day feels heavy for you. If every day feels heavy, now not just like a couple days out of the month or a one day a week, which is just kind of your harder day. Like if day after day after day feels really heavy because the amount of expectation on your shoulders, I would say you're probably at your limit there, and it's time to have a good discussion about that. Okay, so this is all just like a heart check-in with yourself, right? What do you want your days to look like? What are your personal strengths? What areas can you automate or outsource? Oh, here's my final tip for this. What is your priority each day? I've talked about this before, but I find it really helpful to have each day have its own kind of key category or its priority for the day. So for example, on the days that my kids go to a co-op or enrichment program, my priority that day can be more like quote work related, right? Because I have a little extra margin to answer emails or be on my computer. There's less kids in my house. They're at school, right? The days that my kids are home and it's like the day after the co-op, it's like the priority is school, homeschool. We might spend an extra 2 hours doing homeschooly stuff, and I don't even check my email that day because we're trying to get on top of the week's workload. There might be a day somewhere in there where it's more community focused, like maybe we get together once a week on a specific day with friends or family. We go to the park, we do a pumpkin patch, we go to an outing. That's just kind of like a community building day. It's one of the perks of homeschool. So you're just like, this is that day. If we come home and we read a little or we do a little math, that's cool too. But like the priority is community. And then having a home day can be really useful. If you are in the rhythm of doing a weekly Sabbath, that home day will probably be the morning and afternoon before you enter Sabbath that evening when the sun sets. We used to be in a really good rhythm with that. I actually need to get back to that because that was really life-giving. Kind of got the whole family on board and we all contributed to getting the house nice and clean and food prepped, and then we kind of chilled for 24 hours. So having the day-to-day priority shift gives you room to not have to feel like every day has to be equal. Like every day, especially if you're a homeschooling parent, every day doesn't have to be 4 hours of schoolwork every day from this time to this time. No questions. You have flexibility because you can kind of block schedule your time. Okay. So that's setting expectations for yourself. That was all just like you as mom. What are you capable of? What is a reasonable expectation to expect from yourself? Because I know that you want to be a hardworking, joyful mother who gets stuff done, but also doesn't completely burn herself out. In my hands, I'm holding 3 bottles I just pulled out of my backpack because I walk around town with these with me basically all the time. They are Ancestral Supplements digestive enzymes, which are so wonderful if you are someone who feels a little bloated after eating or you feel like you need a little bit of help in the digestive area, or you're just like, you know what, I eat a lot of amazing food, I want to make sure my body's breaking it down, digestive enzymes are your go-to. Ancestral greens, like I said before, I've never jumped on a greens powder before just for the sake of it, but I found one that had superfoods from animal food sources as well as organic plant sources, which I love. So Ancestral Greens is an amazing supplement for, again, gut health, but also just getting in those micronutrients your body might be lacking. And then the real king of them all is the grass-fed beef organs by Ancestral Supplements. Wonderful, wonderful way to get in that ancestral nutrition in a modern world. I know we're probably not eating chicken livers once a week like we might have, or we don't have genuine organ meats in our bologna or hot dog or salami like we maybe once did. And so having a capsule we can take really easily to, again, get those micronutrients that we are lacking into our diet in a way that fits in with our modern lifestyle is so wonderful. So if any of that sounds interesting to you and you haven't leveled up your nutrition game yet, go over to ancestralsupplements.com/homegrown. You can see everything that I currently have in my pantry, and then you can use code homegrown at checkout for 15% off. Fall has officially joined the chat. I think today is the very first day. Herbal tea with all organic ingredients. And all of those teas I have enjoyed and loved for multiple years, and they're all wonderful additions to your fall lineup. If you are a tea girl, just like I am, go over to shoptheh.com and click on our tea and coffee selections. And be sure to use the code homegrown at checkout for 10% off your order. That we've had below 50 weather, which is insane. But anytime the weather gets a little bit cooler like it is today, I always itch for a cup of tea. And I have loved our organic and fair trade teas that we offer over at Haselmayer Goods. That's amazing because the tea industry is quite complicated. We import a lot of our teas because the United States doesn't necessarily grow tea, doesn't grow coffee either. And so you really want to make sure that when you're purchasing coffee and tea, you're doing it in an ethical manner. And that's why everything we sell at Haselmayer Goods is either direct trade or fair trade or working directly with the small farmers. And our teas are just unreal. We have a chai that is so bold and deliciously spicy without being overly pungent. We have a really beautiful lavender Earl Grey that makes the best teas, either hot tea or enjoyed iced even. And then we have a matcha, a ceremonial grade organic matcha that we absolutely love. This is crazy. We have been taking our leftover lavender Earl Grey tea, creating a simple syrup by just adding sugar and reducing it, and using that lavender Earl Grey tea simple syrup in our matcha latte. That's the most bougie thing I've ever heard. If I sold that at a coffee shop, I'd have to retail it for like $12 because these are premium ingredients. But this is our tea lineup. We also have a wonderful English breakfast over at Haselmayer Goods. And for those who don't drink caffeine or prefer to go caffeine free, we have an amazing cranberry orange herbal tea with all organic ingredients. And all of those teas I have enjoyed and loved for multiple years, and they're all wonderful additions to your fall lineup. If you are a tea girl, just like I am, go over to shoptheh.com and click on our tea and coffee selections. And be sure to use the code homegrown at checkout for 10% off your order. The most, in my opinion, overlooked expectation setting in our house has been with our kids. And this one is so important. A lot of times our motherly burnout is because we're not asking enough of our children. We are doing too much for them. Honestly, guys, we're doing too much for our kids. We love them so much, and sometimes it's just easier for us to do it instead of asking them to do it. But it is leading to your burnout. Your kids are wildly capable. They're so much more capable than you even know. And there's so many household things that they can manage, but also there is an expectation that we can set with them based on their age, just to give you that peace and that quiet, still house. And I think this isn't talked about enough. So I actually broke it down by age group what I have seen kind of be appropriate for boys or girls. And you might disagree, you might agree, you might have more input. I don't know. Put it in the comments. I'll read it and I would love to hear your thoughts. Here's my thing. I think kids 3 and under are just in a unique space where they need a lot of you and they're probably still napping. So it's like the Lord's way to say, like, they need every ounce of you, but when they sleep, is a moment. They might take a nap for you. And if they're not napping and they're 3, I've been there too. A lot of my kids stopped napping at 2 years old or younger. Quiet time has been helpful for us, finding something for them to do, getting really messy in an art bin, but like it's worth it actually. Those are examples. But 3 and under, there's really no expectation for your kid to like handle a lot on their own, and that's totally okay. Now, 4 and 5-year-olds, I do feel are inching into this realm of a little more independence. And I would say a 4 or 5-year-old could pick up toys in a living room. Maybe your 2 or 3-year-old could too. I think they can throw away trash. I think, and specifically, like if I tell the kids, like, go clean the basement, I will say, like, who does what thing? Ruth, fold the blankets, but Ray, you come pick up the trash. You round up the dishes. You XYZ, okay? So I think a 4 or 5-year-old could pick up trash, could pick up toys, could make their own bed. It's not going to be cute. Probably can't post it on Instagram, but they can make their own bed. They could organize like a shoe haul or front haul, or as long as there's nothing high they have to hang up, they could probably organize like low things on, I'm thinking shoes in the front of our house is usually what I have my youngest kid do at the time. So those are really easy ways to get them involved. And the more you get them involved and used to flexing that muscle when they're little, the more they're going to be able to do when they're a little bit older. So for the 7-year-old, I'm just going to jump every about 2 years. For the 7-year-old, they can clear dishes off the dining room table, I think. We have all glass stuff, all ceramic stuff. It's very heavy, and our 7-year-olds have always been able to manage. So even if it's a one at a time kind of an issue, they can do that. I think they can bring bikes in from outside, bikes and scooters and go-karts and that kind of a stuff, blankets, picnic blankets. They can bring that in. I think that they can, so just to be clear, they can do everything the 5-year-old can do. And then this is my addition to their age. They can also probably spend 30 minutes of quiet time to themselves. I think that this could be reading a little book. This could be coloring. This could be on the couch in the other room or maybe at the kitchen table. But I think 7-year-olds are capable of spending 30 minutes by themselves without a screen. They could, with a screen, they could probably spend an hour by themselves, honestly, because I think a screen locks you in a little bit longer. But I think a 7-year-old is probably capable of giving you 30 minutes of screen-free quiet time, just sitting there doing stuff. Even if they're like building a fort in their room, they're not necessarily sitting still. I think they don't need you for 30 minutes at 7 years old. Again, maybe you agree or disagree. I don't know. 9 years old, again, they can do everything the 5 or 7-year-old can, but now they can probably fix themselves lunch. They can help with dinner prep. They can put away the dishes, unload from the dishwasher, at least maybe the bottom drawers or the cups or the silverware. They can vacuum, and I think they're capable of 1 to 2 hours of quiet time, in my experience. A 9-year-old can get lost in a book, can do a puzzle or like an activity book. They can color, they can watercolor, they can set up something, they can run around outside, they can bike, they can build a fort in the woods, they can whittle, all kinds of things. I think 1 to 2 hours of quiet play where they're not necessarily coming in and asking you for something every 5 minutes is appropriate for a 9-year-old. 11 can do everything we just mentioned, but I also think they can clean bathrooms. They can play without interrupting you for 2 to 4 hours. The 11-year-old can. So 4 hours, think of that. When my daughter was 11, she was probably away in her room reading for 3 to 5 hours about. So that's kind of where I'm getting this from, is just like my experience, but also what I've seen other, like my nieces and nephews be able to do. And the 11-year-old can run their own laundry. They absolutely can. They can run your laundry. They can run their laundry. They can run the towels. They can do whatever you want. I think that they are capable of doing everything mentioned, plus cleaning bathrooms and doing laundry. And then when you get to 13, you're really opening up to, they should be able to do just about everything that you could possibly ask. I'm talking cook dinner from scratch, babysit their younger siblings, clean the kitchen, wipe down the counters, clear off the dishes, vacuum, Not saying they should do all of that every day, but their capability is that they can absolutely do a lot of that. And when they're 13, that's less of how can I get them to play and be distracted on their own? And it's the challenge then flips to being how can I make sure I'm pouring into them in an intentional way? This might mean that now you're the person that's like, okay, 1 to 2 hours a week, I need to take them out for coffee. I need to go take them to the park to throw balls. I need to go take them to the bike trail and we're going to do a jog or we're going to bike or we're just going to walk for a little bit and talk. This is less of like my 13-year-old keeps pestering me and interrupting. That doesn't happen as much. But now the timing is flipped to where you're as the mom trying to figure out how you can intentionally fit into their schedule. It's kind of a funny reality, honestly. So, expectations of kids is so helpful because this gives you an outline for one, things that they can be doing around the house so that it's not all falling on you, but also what are we expecting of them in terms of like how much they're interrupting our work. I'm not saying you're on the couch watching TV and they're asking you for something. I don't know a whole lot of moms who just have a bunch of spare time that they're just chilling on the couch during the day. But like, if you are in the middle of something, so often our kids come up to us and ask us because it's the easier thing to do. And we can start to gently nudge our kids in a direction of like, hey, you can actually get that water on your own. I can't tell you how many times I've had to say that. You can get the water on your own. And that can be really helpful for contributing to the mental overload. The third and final expectation setting is with your spouse, and this one is going to be so individualized. It starts with a conversation about gifts and skills, the same way you talked to yourself about what expectations are realistic for yourself. So, everyone, like as the orchestrator of your house, you want everyone playing in their strongest position, including your spouse, your kids too, but also your spouse. And so there are some husbands who are amazing at house projects or yard work or staying on top of finances and paying the bills or investment money, or they're amazing at, coaching your kids' baseball teams or soccer teams, and they do a lot of the driving around. There are husbands who are like, I'll get up with you every night with that little baby in the middle of the night and just sit there with you. There are husbands who are amazing at setting vision and really leading the family in a direction and building a lifetime legacy. There are husbands amazing at cooking and cleaning and doing the laundry. And so everyone is so different. So I'm not even going to get into like how you should think about this. I'm just going to share the example of my house and then you can have a similar exercise done for yours. So I have two columns here. One is things that Joey does and the other is things he doesn't do. Okay, these are expectations we have established. We've been married for over 10 years. We've had kids that entire time. We have 4 children. We have a new baby about every 4 years. So, the clock always resets. So we've gone through this refining many, many times. So here's what Joey does do. He's an excellent vision caster. He's amazing at foreshadowing or foreseeing where the direction our family is going and really making sure that that's where we want to be. He's great at leading me and keeping me encouraged and accountable in things. He does great to motivate me and the work I'm doing, and I feel very supported in the decisions I'm making by him. Like, we have great communication. He's a good communicator, and I'm putting this specifically in here because I think that that is part of the expectation. Like, that helps me feel less overwhelmed because I know he knows what's on my plate. I feel very seen by him understanding my role and everything I have going on. So he's great at that. He's great at communicating that. He's great at setting that. We kind of decide on some of those things together. He is wonderful if I need him to do the dishes and clean up. He's a very clean person. He's worked in restaurants. He knows what to do. It's not like if he does it, then I feel like, well, dad did the dishes. So like he does a great job. He puts on like the most gangster rap music you've ever heard. And he just does the dishes and vacuums and does the whole first floor. So that's great. He's fully capable to cook us an amazing meal and go grocery shopping. A lot of guys are like not super comfortable, like, okay, write me a list and then maybe I'll go, but I'm not sure I can find everything. Joey doesn't need a list. He's like, give me a general idea, or if you have no ideas, I'll come up with something on my own. I'll cook it, and then I'll do the dishes, and it'll probably be, you know, better than anything I could personally make because he's just a great cook. So that's cool. That's a very big asset to my not feeling overwhelmed all the time, is knowing that if I need to lean on him for that task, I can. Putting older kids to bed, you know, runs his own laundry. Those are silly things. Things he doesn't do. He's not a man that's going to get up in the middle of the night when we have tiny babies, unless we really, I would say maybe 3 nights possible. Things are really going south and it's like, I just need a moment. You know, everyone has those hard nights with newborns or babies in the first year. And so those times, sure, he'll chime in. But really, he's always been a man that's had to go back to work like right away, like week 1. And so it's just kind of been our rhythm for me to handle nighttime and daytime. And then he supports me in other ways. He'll come home and cook dinner. He'll go to the grocery store. He'll get the girls all cleaning up and kind of organize what they're doing, right? So there's other ways he fills in. But not every dad has to do the same thing that every other dad is doing. He used to get a lot of flack for that, actually. He probably still does, but that's okay. I don't feel betrayed at all by it. It's actually a decision that we've made together. So that's why I put a bed in the nursery, so that I could manage sleeping in there without interrupting. It gave me a second option for me to manage my night times, knowing I didn't want to wake up Joey because he had to work the next day. He does not manage the household budget or do a whole lot of finances or pay any bills. I do all of that. He doesn't do a ton of like house projects or landscaping, mostly for a lack of time. That's not even really something we've outsourced yet. We just kind of have let things go for a minute. Business owner reality there. And then he doesn't do a whole lot of like running kids to different activities, a lot of carpooling. Most of that I handle. So just examples of expectations. You're going to find your own little thing that works for you, but the answer isn't always that something needs to come off your plate and onto his. Perhaps maybe your kids need to pick up a load. Perhaps maybe it's a combination. Perhaps it's one of those automated or outsourced things that we talked about earlier. So those are all ways to help soothe the feeling of chronic overwhelm, is considering each person's expectations. Wow, that took me a lot longer to get through than I thought. So now moving on to number 2, the thing that we all deal with at some point in our motherhood is information overload. This is usually happens when we're pregnant and we're trying to read all the books and listen to all the podcasts and watch all the blogs or vlogs and read all the blogs and all of these things, right? And there's information overload and we're not really sure the hierarchy of authority and who we should listen to. And these experts disagree on this topic, but then this person said this, and then my favorite influencer recommended this. And what do I do? Information overload. And it's ironic because this podcast is a part of that. Obviously, this is information to you. So this is part of the reality. But here's how I have built a hierarchy in my head in the past to keep me sane, because so many decisions have so many opinions that you don't even have time to create your own opinion because you're just trying to read through everyone else's. And so I've squashed that and I've said, you know what? This is the hierarchy of information I will take in. I like to start with books on a topic. If it's a topic that I want to learn more about, whether it's cooking, whether it's the history of food in the kitchen, whether it is childhood health, whether it is the nature of childhood diseases, whether it is farming and agriculture, raw dairy, any of that, I like to start with a book, because call me old fashioned, but a book takes so much time and effort to put together, and it usually has reference points of other places that they gleaned information from. Everything is tied together. There's usually something that you can like search and find a specific answer to your question in that book. Now, here's the downside, is the book takes a while to get published, right? And unless they do regular updates, maybe that information is less updated for certain topics. But I like to start with books. I then recommend and I do this too, I try to do this, is only having like 1 to 2 profiles of content creators on social media per topic that I listen to. Not listen to, but more that I even consume their content. So I probably won't have 5 different people that I'm hearing or seeing posts from that all post about the same thing. I usually pick like 1 to 2 that I really care about, especially if it's a YouTube channel. I like to kind of stick with 1 or 2 people in a specific topic. And that way I get to know that creator. I know where I align with them. I don't align 100% with anyone. So I know where our differences may be. And then it gives me the chance to not just get confused and cherry pick, but just like regularly consume the content and learn from them while also still forming my own opinions on a topic. That might sound silly to you, but that's just like how I think about it. And then people in real life. This is so critical. I like to tune out as much as possible the extra information, especially around like election year or anything that's incredibly polarizing. I really tend to unplug and I talk to the people in my life. I have conversations with my dad. I invite him over for tea. We talk about politics. I have conversations with Joey. He maybe stays a little more in tune with news or related things, and we'll talk through stuff that's important to us. I might ask like my brothers or some of my friends what they're thinking about specific topics, but I like to just treat it like I don't live in 2025 and I don't have access to 7 billion people's sad stories. And sometimes I just want to only hear who's around me and what's going on in my town, in my city, and go a little insular. And I think that that sometimes has a bad connotation, like, oh, you're shutting out the world. You should be, cultured, or you should be aware of what's going on. But I'm not sure my nervous system is set up for that. And I saw that recently in the last couple of weeks. So just when chaos ensued online and just everywhere in real life, truly, it was really good for me to pull back. And so it might be really good if you're feeling that information overload to pull back. Again, this can contribute to some of that like mental overstimulation. It 100% does. The third and final, so I was a little quicker. The third and final pain point that I feel we all go through as moms is a loss of identity. And this one's so funny because motherhood is supposed to like give you this whole new version of yourself, but it's weird because you kind of have to learn who that person is. And it's very frustrating. It can be very frustrating to feel like I am not the same person I was before I had this child or became responsible for this child's care, but I also don't really know who I am now. And part of that is because there is a season of your life where you aren't focused on any of your personal interests and you're really just keeping that baby safe and protected and nourished. And it's not really clear the point at which it's appropriate for you to then kind of come back into your own. Some people say it's 2 years. Some people say it takes, 6 months and you're right back to your old kind of rhythm. Some people would say it's 5 years. Some people say you're postpartum forever and there's no real going back to any version of yourself you thought you once knew. And so, again, everyone's going to have different opinions, but a loss of identity happens when you feel like you can't find joy or you can't find interest in things outside of your child and you have a desire to do so. We had a show on the other night and Joey was watching it and Bowman was pushing around he figured out how to push around this little bench to basically walk himself across the floor, and he was so excited. And he was just smiling. He kept looking back at me to like make sure I was looking. And I couldn't have cared what was on the TV. Like I literally had no interest in it. I only cared about him and the joy on his face. I'm not saying there's anything wrong with that. That is not an example of lost identity. I think finding joy in your kids is 100% appropriate. We should and we do. I'm talking about when there is a longing in your heart for another thing. It might be a hobby that you do alongside of your kids. It might be a hobby you do outside of them, like maybe you leave the kids with your spouse or a babysitter, or a parent or an in-law. and you have something. And so this takes some exploration and time and experimentation. It hasn't always been helpful for me to go to moms groups. I know that's like number one advice for some reason, but I've never really gelled with a moms group that I've been a part of. It sometimes is helpful when I'm with other moms. Like I have girls I like to go on walks with or meet up for coffee, but relying on that scheduling is really hard when you're both in the thick of parenting, because it's really hard to get together once a week with other moms. And my encouragement here is that some of your disciplines can also be your hobbies. So it doesn't have to necessarily be this separate thing. So, for example, I have found that a weekly rhythm of meeting up with some girls and going to the gym, my sister in law's gym, and working out as a discipline is also some of that time of like, no, I am strong. I am here. I'm capable. I'm lifting heavier weights. I'm able to do this. This is good. So that is just another thing to consider. This is definitely something that your personality can shine through your motherhood in many ways. I know many crafty, creative moms who love to make their kids Halloween costumes or make their clothes or decorate for their birthdays. And that's an expression of them. And it's like beautiful. I know other moms who that's not their jam. I know other moms who have taken a passion of theirs and it has turned it into something that they can actually monetize. And so they're bringing in an additional income through the passion that they have. I mean, this was my kind of story. I was kind of like an accidental entrepreneur. It's not always something I would recommend, because I do think there's something special about keeping the passions and the interests in your life separate from something that then you become a slave to, because you have to work inside of it. But when it does align, it does work, that's cool. That's a question for you to ask yourself. But the loss of identity is one that it's going to shift over time. You're going to feel differently as a mom to a preschooler than you did as a mom to a newborn. You're going to feel differently when your kids are a little bit older. You're going to go through phases too, just as you grow up and you age. And if you're like me and you had kids young and you were still kind of growing up in that era, it's totally okay for those seasons to look different. So I've had times in my life where I didn't have any hobbies, and I'll tell you, I was extremely resentful of my husband who did have hobbies. He would go play soccer, he would go, I don't even know, do whatever, and he'd like meet the guys for wings, and I would like kind of be annoyed. Looking back on that, it wasn't him that was the problem. I didn't have something. So there was just like an envy there or a jealousy. And he used to literally tell me that, like, you should get some hobbies. I'll watch the kids, go do something fun. So that's been a season of my life. I've had a season of my life where I was just really interested, wanted to learn everything I could about food and farming. And I was visiting farms and we were watching documentaries, and I was learning how to use different cuts of meat and make new recipes. And it became my hobby. And then there's been times where working out has really been a part of that. Getting really into fitness. I've often supplemented that with like a really dedicated learning around health and wellness. So reading books like Deep Nutrition or The Glucose Revolution, or any of the books that I've read over the last like 5 to 8 years, those like weirdly become my hobby. Like I have an interest, I start listening to podcasts about them. It's something outside of child rearing that I find interest in, and it also happens to serve me well because I'm learning more about how I can be healthier and better. A hobby doesn't have to be like wine night with the girls, or your identity doesn't have to be like always an escaping activity away from your kids. It can absolutely be something you do with your kids. Like I mentioned before, I bought a bow this year, and archery is a new hobby of mine. It's been really fun to get good at shooting the target in my backyard. So that's a hobby. Thought running was going to be a hobby for a minute. Maybe I'll pick it back up in a little bit. But either way, the loss of identity is something that plagues all of us at one time or another. You have to find your spark in something You have to figure out the window of time which it's appropriate for you to begin doing that. I think early postpartum is actually a really interesting time. You have time to like read or listen to podcasts a little bit more because you have a sleeping baby a lot. I bought my bow when my son was like 8 weeks old, which sounds crazy, but like for me mentally, I needed something other than him to be thinking about. Like I was spending so much time and energy thinking about his eating and his sleep and everything, his growth and all of the things, that I was like, it's healthier for me to have an exterior thing. And so if that's helpful for you, like I don't think that that's bad. It didn't cause me to neglect him by any means. I would just push him out there in the stroller and we'd shoot bows, or he would be napping or something, and I would find little pockets of 10, 15 minutes to go shoot in the backyard. So that is my encouragement. I know that all moms deal with the feeling of overwhelm, the information overload, and the loss of identity. And I know that all those things are hard. My hope and prayer for you is that this was encouraging, that you can go set clear expectations for yourself, for your kids, for your husband, that you can pare down the stimulus you're seeing on your phone and all that extra information that you're gathering either from social media or news feeds or television, whatever it might be, and that you can start to peel back the layers of who you are on this new side of motherhood by leaning into some of your disciplines as hobbies, finding new interests. Even I think hobby is sometimes intimidating. Like, do I have to start sewing and quilting? Like, no, you can just be interested in a topic and read about it. And I find that to be a pretty adequate hobby. So hope that's encouraging. We will see you guys back here for episode 3 of the Motherhood series.